Rick stepped onto the orbital freighter Iron Fang, the ship designated to ferry him and the Deathworld squad toward the edge of known space. The hum of the engines was steady and cold, but the air inside the cramped quarters was thick with unspoken tension. He carried the weight of the contract in his mind, but the real burden was about to reveal itself. The squad was waiting. They sat together in the common area, shadows cast by dim, red emergency lighting. 4 figures, almost statuesque, almost inhuman, who seemed to absorb the silence rather than break it. Myra Voss rose first as Reich entered. Her black glass arm caught the light, casting strange reflections on the bulkhead. Her eyes locked onto his like a predator sizing up fresh prey. "You're Tarn," she said, voice low and even. No warmth, no smiles. "I'm him." She circled him slowly like a wolf scenting a newcomer. "You know why no one wants this mission?" Rick nodded, keeping his gaze steady. "They say Deathworld squads don't come back. Or they come back, changed." Voss smiled, a thin slash of teeth that wasn't comforting. "They're right. But they don't say why." Behind her, Marcus Kim, Ghost, leaned forward. His face was calm, but his eyes flickered with a predatory gleam. "We don't just survive the jungle, we shape it, we break it." Tessa Rhine and Dax Horn said nothing but gave Rick quick, appraising looks. Each of them bore scars, cybernetic limbs, and a weariness that spoke of battles fought not just in the body, but in the mind. Voss gestured to a wall holomap displaying the planet they'd soon drop onto, Gorgrak 7th, a mass of swirling green and brown marked with red zones. "That jungle isn't just hostile. It's a living nightmare. It learns, it adapts, it hunts." Rick swallowed hard. "Why do you keep going back?" Voss's smile darkened. "Because we don't just go back. We go through it. And when you come out the other side, you're not the same." She stepped closer. "We're not mercenaries. We're something else, built for survival, born in war zones that would break any sane man." "Like me?" Rick asked, trying to mask the edge of doubt. Ghost spoke up then, voice almost a whisper. "You think you're ready? We'll see." Rick was led to a gear room, where military-grade weapons and specialized survival equipment waited for him. His standard rifle was upgraded with experimental mods, smart tracking rounds, enhanced optics calibrated for dense jungle foliage, biofeedback sensors to monitor his stress levels. "You'll need it," Voss said, her voice echoing behind him. "That jungle doesn't just want to kill you. It wants to unmake you." The crew gathered for the mission briefing one last time before the drop. The target was a crashed alien facility, buried deep under layers of dense, shifting jungle. The artifact inside was rumored to be a bioweapon, sentient, terrifying, and capable of manipulating fear itself. "Extraction point is 2 clicks east of the crash site," Voss said, tracing a path on the holomap. "We move fast, avoid unnecessary contact. But if the jungle comes for us..." She paused. "We fight. Hard." Rick noticed the hardened determination in their eyes, but also something darker. A glimmer of hunger. The kind you don't see until it's too late. He forced down a surge of adrenaline. This was no ordinary mission. This was a trial by fire. "Ready for the jump?" Voss asked, stepping into the airlock. Rick hesitated only a fraction of a second, before following. As the freighter plunged through the void toward Gorgrak 7, the stars outside blurred into streaks of light. Inside, silence stretched thick as the cold metal walls closed in. Rick sat alone in the drop pod, strapping in, the hatch sealing behind him with a hiss. His heart pounded. The squad's final words echoed in his mind. "We don't just survive. We conquer." The pod shook violently as it pierced the atmosphere, the dense jungle looming beneath like a beast waiting to devour them all. And Rick realized something chilling. He wasn't just fighting the planet, he was fighting the very essence of survival. The drop pod slammed into the thick canopy of Gorgrak 7 with a violent jolt that threw Rick against his restraints. The world outside the pod was a wall of green, an endless sprawl of vines, giant ferns, and twisted trees reaching skyward, their trunks glowing faintly under the planet's dim sun. The hatch hissed open and Rex stepped out, his boots sinking slightly into the mossy ground. The air was thick and humid, tinged with a scent like iron and rot. Somewhere in the distance a low growl echoed, followed by an eerie chorus of screeches and clicks. The Deathworld squad was already moving, fluid, almost inhuman. Voss led, her cybernetic arm slicing through the dense underbrush with ease. Behind, her ghost moved silently, his optical enhancements scanning every shadow. Tessa and Dax brought up the rear, weapons at the ready scanning for threats invisible to Reek's unaugmented eyes. For a moment, Reek just watched. These weren't just soldiers. They were predators shaped by a world far more brutal than anything he'd faced. Voss's laugh cut through the jungle, a sharp, almost gleeful sound that seemed at odds with the danger all around. "Welcome to the jungle," she said, glancing back at him with a wild spark. "You'll learn to love it, or it'll kill you." Reek swallowed, gripping his rifle tighter. They moved fast, navigating through tangled roots and vines that seemed to move beneath their feet. The jungle wasn't passive, it shifted subtly, changing paths, obscuring landmarks. It was alive in ways that unsettled Rick more than any beast. Suddenly something moved. A flash of orange and black erupted from the undergrowth. A predator the size of a large dog, its eyes glowing with unnatural intelligence. It lunged at Voss, but she was faster, her arm transforming into a high-velocity blade that sliced clean through the creature's spine. "Stay sharp," she warned, eyes scanning for more. "They don't come alone." Reich fired a quick burst at a shadow moving nearby. The creature screamed and vanished into the dense foliage. The squad pressed on toward the alien facility, the air growing colder, heavier with static. As they neared the crash site, strange lights flickered between the trees. Bioluminescent fungi or something else? The jungle seemed to pulse, almost breathing. At one point, Reek caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Shapes that resembled humanoids, but moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. He blinked, but they were gone. "Don't trust your eyes," Ghost said quietly, sensing Reek's hesitation. "The jungle plays tricks on your mind." Hours passed in a tense blur. The squad took point, clearing traps and avoiding the worst of the native wildlife. But the planet wasn't done with them yet. As night fell, the jungle erupted in a symphony of snarls, hisses, and guttural roars. Strange eyes glowed in the darkness, watching. Voss crouched, scanning the trees. "They're learning," she said, "adapting to us." Rick's heart hammered as shadows crept closer. He fired instinctively, the light from his rifle briefly illuminating grotesque creatures, alien predators that looked like twisted amalgams of reptile and insect. One lunged, its claws slashing the air inches from his face. Tessa fired a grenade, the explosion throwing shards of foliage and glowing spores into the air. "We move," Voss barked. The squad ran, cutting through the jungle with brutal efficiency. Rick's lungs burned, his mind racing. This wasn't just a hostile planet. It was a sentient predator, and they were its prey. Suddenly, the ground beneath Rick shifted. Roots snapped, and the earth seemed to open like a maw. He stumbled but was caught by Ghost's outstretched hand. "You okay?" Ghost asked, voice steady as ever. "Yeah, just... the jungle's alive." Rick gasped. "It's more than alive," Voss said, her voice low and intense. "It's watching us." They reached a small clearing, the alien facility looming ahead. A massive structure half buried in vines and moss, its metal surfaces scratched and dented, but still pulsing faintly with energy. Voss turned to Rick. "You wanted a death sentence. Welcome to the front lines." Rick stared at the looming facility and felt a chill deeper than the jungle's humidity. He realized then that survival wasn't just about skill or firepower. It was about becoming something the planet couldn't kill. The air inside the last bastion was thick with smoke, sweat, and a low murmur of dangerous men counting credits they didn't have. It was a dive of a bar orbiting the mining colony on Carrick 9, a place mercenaries came when they were down to their last bullet or their last friend. Rick Tarn sat at the far end of the bar, nursing a synthetic whiskey that burned through his throat like acid and settled cold in his gut. He wasn't here for the drink. He was here for the contract. A holographic file hovered above the cracked bar table, blinking insistently. The client was anonymous, standard for high-risk jobs. The pay was astronomical, enough to wipe his debts clean and buy him a ship capable of disappearing from the syndicate's radar for good. But the mission itself was a death sentence wrapped in gold. The briefing streamed through the room like poison. A deep jungle planet, Gorgrak 7, quarantined and marked as a kill zone. The client wanted the retrieval of an artifact from a crashed alien facility, an artifact that previous teams never returned from. What set this job apart wasn't just the planet. It was the company you kept, the infamous Deathworld squad. 4 humans, survivors of places so brutal their enemies whispered about them in dread. They were augmented, ruthless, and called monsters by the few who dared mention their name. No hired gun who had joined them had come back sane, or alive. Rick heard the whispers as he approached the table where the hologram hovered. Deathworld squad? Forget it, no one's ever walked away from that mess. Another merc spat on the floor. They don't survive, they become something else. Worse than the jungle. Rick glanced around. These were not superstitions, not tales told to scare rookies. The men here had seen what came back from missions with those humans. Broken shells, violent shadows, or worse, silence. He swallowed hard. His debts were piling higher than the towers on Nexus 7. His options were shrinking. No other contracts had his name on them. No one else was stupid enough to accept. He was. A grizzled veteran named Jax Ward slid beside him, eyeing the hologram. You're serious, huh? You know what they say about Deathworld squads? They're not mercs, they're predators, and predators eat the weak first. Rick met Jax's gaze, unflinching. I'm not weak. Jax chuckled darkly. Not yet. The room fell quieter as the hologram flickered, displaying the 4 squad members. First there was Myra Voss, the leader. A woman with a cybernetic left arm that gleamed like black glass and eyes that seemed to burn through you. She smiled like she had a secret no one else could hear. Beside her, Marcus Ghost Kim, who moved with a silence that unnerved even seasoned trackers. His right leg was a mesh of titanium and fiber optics, but his lethality was all human. The others, Tessa Rhine and Dax Horn, both bore scars and augmentations that told stories of battles most mercs wouldn't dare fight. The briefing ended, with a warning etched into every file. Do not underestimate the planet. Do not doubt the squad. Do not expect to come back. Rick folded the contract, his fingers trembling ever so slightly. The bartender, an old man with a metal jaw, leaned close. You know why they call it Deathworld? Because no one comes back from it, right, or they don't come back at all. Rick nodded. I heard. The old man's eyes glittered with something that wasn't just pity. You sure you want to do this? You're not just fighting beasts out there, you're fighting the part of humanity that's forgotten how to die. Rick stood, wallet a little heavier, heart pounding with a mix of dread and a strange thrill. Tell them I'm ready, he said. The murmurs around the bar swelled again, part respect, part disbelief. Some said the squad was a curse, others whispered they were evolution in motion. But everyone agreed on one thing. Once you signed on, you were no longer just a hired gun. You became prey, and sometimes prey fights back. The alien artifact pulsed like a heartbeat, filling the vast chamber with an eerie blue glow that cast long, flickering shadows across the walls. Rick Tarn could feel it probing at the edges of his mind, like icy fingers brushing against fragile memories and buried fears. Around him, the Deathworld squad moved with mechanical precision. Voss's cybernetic arm extended, emitting a soft hum as she scanned the room for traps or defenses. The facility was old, older than any human had charted, its purpose long lost to time, but its defenses remained deadly. Tessa Rhine crouched near the artifact, her eyes narrowed as she checked a handheld scanner. The core's power signature is fluctuating, she said quietly. Like it's alive. Ghost moved to the control panel, his fingers flying over alien glyphs that sparked with energy. The air crackled, tension mounting like a living beast. Suddenly, the room shifted. A low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows as a mass of writhing tendrils erupted from the walls. The bioweapon had awakened. Reek barely dodged a lashing appendage, the air whooshing as it snapped inches from his face. The creature wasn't just a mass of muscle and sinew. It was a symbiotic extension of the planet itself, a living nightmare born of fear and violence. Voss fired her pulse rifle, each shot lighting up the dark chamber. Focus fire, don't let it surround us. The squad's weapons tore into the creature's flesh, but it reformed faster than their bullets could pierce. The tendrils writhed and twisted, seeking to ensnare and consume. Rick felt a cold dread wash over him as the creature's whispers seeped into his mind. Fear feeds me. Your weakness is my strength. He shook his head, fighting the insidious voice. But the creature knew his deepest fears, his failures, his losses, the faces of comrades he'd left behind. In that moment, Rick understood what the Deathworld squad truly fought against. Not just the planet's physical horrors, but the terror that lived within themselves. Voss shouted, "Reich! Use the disruptor grenades!" He fumbled with the small devices, heart, hammering as the creature's tendrils closed in. With a desperate throw, the grenades exploded in a shower of blue-white light, searing the bioweapon's flesh. The creature howled in rage and pain, retreating into the shadows with a final chilling whisper, "I will hunger again." Breathing hard, the squad regrouped. Ghost's eyes flickered as he scanned the control panel again. The artifact's no longer dormant. It's linked to the creature, part of its survival. Voss's expression hardened. That thing is the key to the jungle's power. If we can control it, we control the planet. Rick's mind reeled. Control the fear? Dominate the nightmare? Could they really? But even as the squad spoke, the jungle outside seemed to pulse, growing restless. Voss glanced at Reek. "You did good back there. You're tougher than I thought." Rick swallowed the bitter taste of gratitude. Tough was a word he wasn't sure he deserved. Not yet. "Why keep coming back?" he asked quietly. "Why risk everything for this nightmare?" Voss's eyes darkened, haunted. "Because someone has to. Because if we don't, the jungle wins." "And what about the cost?" Rick pressed. "All the others who never came home?" "We survive," she said simply. "Because we have to. Because no one else can." The squad prepared to move deeper into the facility, the bioweapons hum a constant reminder of the danger they faced. Reek glanced back at the artifact, its pulsing light like a heartbeat syncing with his own. The jungle was no longer just a place to fear. It was a force to conquer. And the price of survival was just beginning. The alien facility was a monolith of rusted steel and jagged vines, half swallowed by the jungle's unrelenting grasp. Its doors, covered in strange glyphs, pulsed faintly with an eerie bluish light that seemed almost alive. Rick Tarn felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, the kind of gut feeling born not just from fear but from something deeper and darker. Voss took point, her black glass arm scanning the surface of the doors. "The jungle's defenses don't stop here," she said quietly. "This place is protected and it's smart. We'll need to be smarter." The squad moved as a seamless unit, ghosts in the dim light. They disabled traps with practiced precision, avoiding spikes that dripped with corrosive acid and laser grids that flared into deadly arcs the moment someone stepped wrong. Rick was a novice in comparison, but he clung to the edge of their formation, determined to survive. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became. The walls seemed to hum with ancient power, and a strange vibration thrummed through Reek's bones. Then the hallucinations began. At first it was small things, whispers in his ear, shadows flickering just beyond his vision. A voice that sounded like his own echoed through empty halls. The walls seemed to breathe, the very air thickening into a suffocating fog. Reek blinked and shook his head, trying to focus. But the jungle's influence had seeped into his mind. Voss noticed. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her eyes held a fierce kindness, tempered by a lifetime of pain. "It's the planet," she said. "It's trying to break you, to unmake you. You have to fight back, not with your gun, with your mind." Rick swallowed hard. He wanted to ask how she fought it, but the answer was clear in her eyes. They didn't just endure the jungle's assaults. They embraced them, becoming something more than human. "Keep moving," Voss ordered, breaking the moment. They reached the core chamber, a vast vaulted room crammed with alien machinery, pulsing softly. In the center, suspended in a field of shimmering energy, was the artifact, a pulsating orb that seemed almost alive, radiating waves of dark power. Rick's skin prickled. The artifact felt sentient, aware of their presence. Suddenly the orb shifted and a voice filled the chamber, not spoken aloud, but inside their heads. "Fear. I feed on it. You bring me sustenance." The squad stiffened, weapons raised. Voss's voice was steady, but cold. "We don't fear." The orb's voice grew stronger, seeping into their minds with relentless pressure. "You will. You all will. Your fears will be your chains." Rick clenched his fists, but the fear wasn't his alone. It rippled through the squad, flickering across their faces for a moment. A crack in the armor. Voss stepped forward, her cybernetic arm glowing. "We're not your prey." The orb pulsed violently. The chamber shifted. Walls rippled like liquid, and the floor trembled. The jungle's influence wasn't limited to the outside world anymore. It was inside, reshaping reality itself. Rick realized then that the jungle wasn't just alive. It was a predator with intelligence and malice, one that hunted not flesh, but the mind and soul. Voss and the squad braced themselves, weapons blazing. Rick followed their lead, his fear sharpening into a fierce resolve. If he was going to survive this, he had to become like them, no longer prey. But a question gnawed at him. How much of his humanity could he afford to lose before he was no longer himself? The deeper the squad moved into the alien facility, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls no longer just hummed, they thrummed, resonating with a low-frequency vibration that settled into Rick's bones. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in a funeral march. Voss led with an unnatural confidence, slicing through the alien corridors like she was born for this place. But even her unshakable facade showed cracks when the shadows started moving. "Stay close," she ordered, voice low and sharp. Ghost's eyes, enhanced with infrared and electromagnetic scanners, flicked nervously across the darkness. "There's something else here," he said. Tessa's scanner beeped rapidly. Multiple life forms detected, not native to this facility. Rick's grip tightened on his rifle, the hairs on his neck rising. The jungle was sending more than just creatures. Something alive had crept into this ancient tomb. Suddenly the lights flickered and died, plunging them into near-total darkness. Emergency red lighting cast eerie shapes on the walls. The temperature dropped sharply. "Power fluctuations," Ghost muttered. "We're not alone." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall, humanoid, but twisted and warped by biomechanical implants that glistened in the red light. Its eyes shone a sickly green, intelligent and calculating. Voss didn't hesitate. "Hostiles." The creature lunged, moving faster than Rick could track. Blades and claws clashed with pulse rifles and cybernetic limbs in a deadly dance of survival. Rick fired into the creature's torso, but it barely flinched. The squad fought back to back, a whirlwind of bullets, blades, and brutal strength. But the enemy was relentless, a living nightmare forged in the crucible of the jungle and this alien technology. Rick felt a sharp pain in his side, a glancing blow from the creature's claw. He stumbled, but caught himself. Blood slicked his fingers. "Keep moving," Voss yelled. "Find the artifact's control node. We shut this down." Ghost dove toward a terminal, fingers dancing over alien glyphs as the creature pressed in, snarling. Tessa covered his back, firing a hail of bullets. The creature snarled, then froze, its eyes flickering wildly. "Now," Voss commanded. Ghost slammed a fist onto the console. The walls shook as a pulse of energy surged through the facility. The creature screamed, collapsing to the floor as circuits sparked and died. For a moment silence fell. Rick leaned against the wall, panting. The pain in his side throbbed, but he pushed it aside. They had won this round, but the cost was clear. Voss crouched beside him, inspecting the wound with clinical efficiency. "You're tougher than you look, but don't get careless," Riki nodded, swallowing back a grimace. "We're close to the artifact's core chamber," Voss said. "But the jungle's going to throw everything it has at us now." Tessa's scanner beeped again, more frantic this time. More hostiles incoming, and something bigger. A low rumble shook the facility as distant footsteps echoed through the halls. Rick's heart hammered in his chest. This mission wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about pure, brutal will. Voss rose, her cybernetic arm glowing. "Let's finish this. For the squad. For every soul the jungle's taken." They moved as one deeper into the facility's heart, shadows closing in, and Rick knew this fight was far from over. The narrow corridor twisted deeper into the facility's bowels, walls lined with pulsating alien veins that pulsed like a living organism. The squad's footsteps echoed hollowly as tension thickened the stale air. Rick's side still burned from the claw wound, but adrenaline masked the pain. Every breath was sharp, every movement deliberate. They were close. Ghost's fingers danced over a cracked console, eyes scanning rapidly. "Control node is just ahead," he said, voice steady, but urgent. "If we can disable the artifact's influence, the jungle's grip should weaken." Voss's black glass arm hummed with energy as she stepped forward, ready for whatever waited. No mistakes. One shot. One chance. Suddenly the floor trembled beneath their feet. From the shadows erupted a monstrous shape, part beast, part machine, an abomination forged by the jungle's nightmare and alien technology. It towered over them, multi-limbed, eyes burning with primal intelligence. The jungle's ultimate guardian. The beast roared, a sound that shook the very walls. "Hold the line," Voss shouted, raising her pulse rifle. Bullets tore into the creature's armored hide, but it barely flinched. It lashed out, crushing the floor where Rick had stood seconds before. He rolled to safety, firing his rifle with grim determination. Tessa unleashed a salvo of grenades, forcing the creature to retreat momentarily. "This thing adapts," Ghost yelled. "It's learning from our attacks." Reich's mind raced. The jungle wasn't just alive. It was evolving. It was hunting them as much as they hunted it. The beast lunged again, its claws scraping the walls. Voss met it head-on, her cybernetic arm transforming into a blade that sang as it sliced through tendrils of living metal. Reich saw his chance, a narrow opening beneath the beast's armored chest. "Cover me," he yelled, sprinting forward. Bullets zipped past him as he slid under the creature, planting an explosive charge on its exposed underbelly. The beast howled, thrashing wildly, as Rick scrambled back to safety. Seconds felt like eternity. The charge detonated with a thunderous blast, sending the creature crashing into the wall. Smoke and debris filled the air. When the dust settled, the beast lay still, its terrifying eyes dimming to darkness. Voss exhaled, wiping grime from her face. That was close. Ghost checked the console again. Node disabled. The artifact's power should be contained. Rick stared at the pulsing orb in the center of the chamber, now flickering uncertainly. The jungle's hold was weakening. But, as relief began to seep in, a new sound cut through the air, a slow, rhythmic pounding. The walls trembled again, deeper and more relentless. The jungle wasn't done yet. "Move," Voss barked. "Get to the extraction point. Now." They raced through collapsing corridors, the facility shaking as if alive and angry. Vines cracked and shattered as the structure groaned in protest. Rick's thoughts raced. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. Outside, the jungle awaited, patient, hungry, eternal. The extraction beacon blinked violently in the distance, a slender pulse of red cutting through the oppressive green haze. The jungle howled behind them, a chorus of rage and hunger that seemed to shake the very air. Rick's breath came in ragged gasps as the squad sprinted through the collapsing ruins of the alien facility. The ground beneath their feet cracked and split. Vines writhed like serpents trying to ensnare their ankles. Every step felt like running on the edge of a knife. One misstep, and they'd be swallowed whole. Almost there, Voss shouted, her cybernetic arm swinging with deadly grace, clearing a path through the suffocating vegetation. But the jungle's fury was relentless. From the shadows, monstrous shapes lunged, twisted, half-organic monstrosities born of the planet's twisted will. The squad fought back with fury, pulse rifles blazing, grenades exploding. But the creatures kept coming, wave after wave, endless and merciless. Rick's side throbbed fiercely. Blood seeped through his torn jacket. Yet every moment of pain fueled his determination. He couldn't afford to fall here, not now, not after everything. Keep moving, extractions 2 clicks ahead, Ghost called out, weaving between attackers with practiced ease. The beacon's signal grew stronger, a siren in the storm of chaos. Suddenly, the earth beneath them quaked violently. The jungle seemed to rise, massive roots and tendrils bursting through the soil like giant claws intent on crushing them. Voss's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. Hold the line. Cover the rear. Tessa and Ghost formed a wall of fire, fending off the onslaught as Voss and Rick pushed forward, sprinting toward the beacon. The drop pod awaited, a battered but operable relic amid the encroaching wilderness. The squad had minutes, maybe seconds, before the jungle tore the world apart. Rick's fingers fumbled with the pod's hatch, heart pounding like a drum of war. Get in, Voss barked, tossing him a weapon as she fought off a massive tendril. With a grunt, Rick slammed the hatch shut and sealed the pod. The engines groaned to life, shaking violently as the jungle thrashed outside. Through the reinforced viewport, he saw the squad making a last stand, Voss's cybernetic blade flashing like lightning, Ghost and Tessa firing in perfect sync. But then a monstrous claw slammed into Voss's chest, sending her flying into the thicket. She struggled, but the jungle's beast loomed over her, roaring triumphantly. No! Rick shouted, pounding the pod's controls. The engine screamed as the pod blasted upward, tearing free from the planet's grasp. From above, Rick watched the jungle reclaim its dead, swallowing Voss and the others like they'd never been. Tears burned his eyes, anger and grief mixing into a bitter taste. The Deathworld squad was a name whispered in dread because none ever came back. But he had. The artifact's power waned in the distance, its pulse dimming as the facility collapsed. Rick stared at the shrinking planet, a silent vow hardening in his chest. They hadn't survived to die forgotten. He would carry their story of brutality, sacrifice, and humanity's stubborn refusal to be extinguished by the universe's deadliest places. Because on Deathworlds like Gorgrak 7th, survivors never came home, but legends did.